Hey everyone, and welcome back to Access Point Podcast, a podcast brought to you by existentialists and tired high school teenagers. Today we're going to be talking about high school and how school has really changed in our dynamics. This year has been kind of different, especially since many schools have moved more towards a online school format. However, when we're approaching second semester, we see a lot of schools actually trying to take the more hybrid approach. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And talking for today, we have our principal, Dr. Ahern. Dr. Ahern, would you please like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kevin Ahern, principal at Monte Vista High School. I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ahern. And for this week's drink, Zoe.
Yes, well, of course, I'm a tired high schooler, so I have a lavender latte. Yeah. Two shots of espresso.
For me today, I have an Arizona watermelon iced tea. It has antioxidants, so you know it's healthy. Got to keep the grades up somehow. All right, so into today's topic today. I think we want to start about like where we as students are at right now, right? Like what's worked, what hasn't worked so far in the school year. Like we've been on online school since about halfway through second semester, March of last year. So Zoe, how have you been seeing online school going for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teachers have been asking for feedback, and it's weird because most of my classmates I find have negative feedback, but I think I love learning from home because I get to sleep a lot more. I get to sleep during lunch too, so it really saves time for me. Aston, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. Like I live quite a ways away from school. Like it's a long commute for me. So I mean, like I cut down that commute like on the way there, on the way back, but also my mom has to drive there and back and there and back again. So I guess we save a lot of time with the commute. Also, like you said, the whole aspect of sleep and just learning from like just in the comfort of my own room. However, that may be affecting my classes.
Yeah. And also,
Any,
huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people are worried about not being able to see their friends or whatever, but I feel more connected to them now because we can talk whenever we want to instead of just like meeting up at school and like saying hi during lunch or something.
Right, definitely gonna have to agree with that. I mean, I think a large aspect as to why a lot of people are choosing to go the hybrid route as opposed to just staying fully remote is because they want to have that more social aspect of school back. But like, I mean, in California at least, I think we're like code purple at this point from like a whole bunch of counties, so that's pretty dangerous.
Oh yeah, I actually wanted to ask about that. Are proceedings gonna be any different now that Contra Costa is purple?
So basically, we were going to follow along the same procedure we've had in place as of right now. So like for example, after school activities, we're going to be able to resume when we get back from Thanksgiving break. So we had those small group activities. There were some limits, but we're not going to have to go back to purple restrictions like we had during the during summer. So it's a little bit different approach. I was actually surprised by that. We got all kind of panicked for a minute because when we went to purple, all of a sudden we kind of shut everything down for a couple of days. But so that piece will still be open. In addition, because we've already started school, we can continue making progress in the hybrid model. So essentially, the plan is to open up on June 5th. Oh, sorry, January 5th. For the June 5th, like that's a long ways off. January 5th, and for students in hybrid, and our teachers are preparing for that, and that's still the plan that's been laid out by our board and by our superintendent, and we're going to continue to work to execute that. From the standpoint of whether there's an actual return to school, that's going to be up to we work with county health. It's up to county health. They will direct our board and our superintendent, and then we'll make a decision based upon those recommendations. But right now, the plan is still full steam ahead. We're planning on that January reopening.
Is there like any chance, like even after we reopen for hybrid, that like it would have to be like shut down?
I mean, again, the health department could say, on January 6th, hey, we're shutting down for all full remote. We're shutting, and then again, there'll be like in March, there'll be a board meeting where there's a conversation about what our decisions are, and we might have an emergency shutdown based upon the recommendations of the county health. So basically, we're going to be very careful about any type of reopening because we are going to have to follow those steps. And so it's exciting to be able to see people back in campus again, even though it's going to be not to the degree that we normally have. But at the same time, it is nice to see students on campus. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how things play out. But ultimately comes down to is that we have some flexibility, even though we're in the purple, to reopen school in that hybrid mode. It is going to have an effect on. I mean, classrooms are already mapped out to only accommodate so many students, but because of county health regulations, we have to have 6 feet between students in classrooms, and that's really the limiting factor of how many students there can be in a classroom. And that's kind of been the ongoing formula we've been working with over the last couple months as we planned out the January reopening.
Right. With that being said, like, how do you think the new dynamic is going to work with like two systems going on at once, especially for those teachers? Like, I take Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she has to teach 3 different classes during one period,
Mm-hmm.
but like some kids may opt to go in person, and like she would have to be teaching like online and in person at the same time. Like, how would that work?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of create this like 2 parallel universes with something in between. Okay, so essentially we have 2 mutually exclusive systems. We have the remote learning component, and we have the hybrid learning component. Remote stays remote. So if someone were to choose remote, they're going to stay remote for the rest of the school year. For people who choose hybrid, the intent is to come back on campus, but it's also designed for people to kind of move on and off campus. So if there was a shutdown, they'd be able to, we could still be in remote, but we'll be remote with that group. And so, but in between, we have what we call singleton courses, and that's Japanese is a great example of that. And singleton courses are going to use something called video conferencing, where a teacher will have students in the classroom. In addition to that, they will also have students who are remote. And that's one of the reasons why we feel we're able to keep those singleton classes as electives, that people really, it helps students come to school. It's that one thing. I hope that Japanese is the course that gets you out of bed in the morning. I don't know, but I mean, a lot of people who, whether it's choir or band or engineering or whatnot, these courses are really important to them, and we want to make sure students continue to access them. And as a result, that video conferencing component is very important, because it doesn't matter whether you choose hybrid or remote, you still get that course. And so that's an example of how the Japanese teacher would be able to work with the students. It is complicated. We have a video feed going on, and it'll be a learning curve for the teachers to really learn how to work in that medium. I know that in a way they're doing it now, but it's very different when you have students in front of you. And we've gone through several different kind of demonstrations about how that might look. And I know that our staff is working really hard and creating some training for our teachers, as well as our districts, creating some training for our teachers to really help them grasp all the nuances that go along with video conferencing.
All right, that's good to hear. But like, there's other. Oh, Zoe, if you want to ask a question, go ahead.
Do our schools have a backup plan in case we do have to have an emergency shutdown?
Well, like I said, the backup plan is remote's remote, right? And they'll continue much like they are right now, with the possibility of changes in classes. Hybrid students will just retreat back into remote. It's just that the video conferencing people will still get this very much like they have now. So it'll look a lot like now, except for the fact that we have 2 distinctly different groups, with one having the ability to go back on campus if the situation arose where they went to a lockdown or whatever, or shelter in place, we're going to call it, and then there was a return to campus a few weeks later, a month later, or whatnot. They would return in hybrid, and then in fact, if things got really good, then they'd actually be able to return full time. But remote needs to remain remote. That's the difficult piece, and so that really makes the decision difficult when people were making that binding decision with their families. Is that this is something that's going to take us over into June, and is this something that we're going to want to hang on to as things either get better or worse?
Right. I was curious about that, actually. So if school were to shut down and everybody were to retreat back onto online, would the kids who originally signed up for hybrid, would they get a new option to go like online again, or are they stuck with hybrid if school were to reopen?
Again, if you choose hybrid, and you retreat back into remote, right? And then if we get the green light from the county to reopen again, then they would go back on campus, back on the same schedule that we plan on implementing on the 5th. So it's basically, it's designed to have those shifts. I think that when we originally set up the system we have now, it was designed to be hybrid, to be able to move from fully remote to hybrid to full school. And there were a lot of feedback in doing a lot of the town halls that our superintendent was doing, where a lot of people just were uncomfortable coming back to school at all. So the idea came around that we need to do these 2 separate systems, because we have people who are really adamant about returning to school and other ones not so much. And so as a result, we want to be able to make sure we're giving high levels of education for people with both feelings. Because it's a really hard decision, because it is scary out there. And I feel confident walking around with a mask, in Costco or or walking around school, but I also I don't walk around many other places because it's just you want to make sure you're safe. And so I think there's different degrees of how you want to keep yourself safe, and at the same time is how willing are you to put yourself out there. And there's kind of a balance there if you think about it.
Right. And when you say like school comes like fully back together, is that just the hybrid kids, or like everybody's at campus at the
That
same
would be
time?
just the hybrid kids for this year. So the students who choose hybrid would be the ones who could do a full return to school. Remote will stay remote. That's what a lot of people, I had a lot of conversations about what that would look like, and how adamant they'll be about that. And the problem is that let's say everything got really good in April, okay, and so we have the full return by hybrid students coming back, and then all of a sudden we have all the students want to come in from remote. We've now created two separate master schedules, so we can't put it all back together again. We're already taking the existing master schedule and fracturing it into two pieces. It'll be extremely difficult to put it back together again. So that's the dilemma. There's a logistical problem that doesn't work. That's why we have to create those two mutually exclusive systems.
And okay, I wanted to ask why schools are planning to reopen when they closed back in March when there were like so many less cases.
So I think I think the idea is we want to make sure that we're really meeting people's needs. I mean, there's students who've done really well in the remote, and for a lot of reasons. And it is kind of funny where you mentioned like getting to sleep at lunch. It's like, I think about when you were in kindergarten, nap time never was a go. Everyone wanted to stay up, and you couldn't. But when you're a teenager, you could really use that nap time. It's kind of funny. But on the other hand, is we also have students who have not done well, have really struggled in this. They struggle with just being separated from peers. They separate from their teachers, and they need that contact. And even that one day in that rotating block would be something that'd be worthwhile. And so as a result, I think that being able to offer both is extremely important.
And do you happen to know like what point the county would plan on shutting down schools? Like how many kids?
That is the county. They're going to make their own decisions about how they want to proceed. That is not in my purview. I mean, it's funny where I think it's funny. I'm a doctor, but I have a doctorate, but I couldn't prescribe you an aspirin. It's like I just kind of it's all academic on this end.
Right. So let's just say like trends hopefully continue to get better by the next school year. What do you think like our district's plan is looking like?
I mean, I think that if everything got better and close to what we're going to call normal, I think that we would go back to what we would consider a normal comprehensive high school. That would be the intent. However, I also in this experience have found that there's a number of factors we want to be able to make sure we meet. One is that there are students who might want to have a complete remote experience and still have the ability to come after school and participate in activities and so on. So we have to think about, is that something we want to be able to provide through Monte Vista? What about the online work that we've done? I mean, teachers this is something we've been nagging them about for years. Also, they had to do it. Is that we need a robust online presence so students can access classes if they miss, and then the work's right there in a Google Classroom. That there needs to be more work done with tech. So as opposed to giving paper assignments, to have a Go Formative or other type of assessment that students can access via a device is much more efficient and much better way to get consistent feedback, because it's one thing when you have a stack of 100 papers you have to mark off. All of a sudden it's something that can be generated for you. It creates a much better feedback loop for students to really show that they understand material. So there's a lot of factors that play in. So I think there's a tech component that we're going to need to be talking about with the return to school. There's that remote component, and then there's the ability of teachers to really fully embrace the educational technologies out there to really help with students' experiences, and the other piece is make assessments and projects more authentic, because there's very few jobs that'll say, hey, do these math problems. There are, like accounting or something like that, but at the same time it's about problem setting and problem solving. How can we apply the things we learn into something that's meaningful? And that's really that's a really hard hill to climb for a lot of people, because sorry, I have two puppies. So my wife is talking to my dog right now. She must have just had an accident. But anyway, so
Sorry.
the idea of getting people's heads around the idea that it's just not about points all the time. It's what students can do, and that's and I think about like this being this podcast, the fact that you've taken your time, this kind of weird time and created this. This is amazing. This is what I love about that you give a little time and you can make something out of it. That's something that makes it worthwhile and something that you feel passionate about and excited about. This is cool. So this is a perfect example of what we should be doing more of.
Thank you. While you were talking,
you like that plug, right?
Huh?
You like that plug, right? That's
definitely.
That was good. So while you were talking, I realized kind of like a stupid question. If we're going back, or if students are going back in person, will they be given like physical assignments, like paper to be graded?
I mean, in theory, but I have not. I have not given them. I'm not. For example, our copy machine is right now laying unused. We have not created a budget for paper. So I'm encouraging teachers to keep it remote, keep it tied to tech, and not make a lot of copies. Our copy and between our copy clerk, our copier and paper, we can definitely do a lot more with the $100,000 or so we're paying for those services. It'd be much easier to be able to apply those in ways that are meaningful to students in the classroom, and put a piece of technology in your hand instead of just always giving you worksheets, because that's really, again, it's more, to me, it's busy work. To me, it's something that is not a genuine. It's not honoring you as somebody who knows how to do something. It's basically saying do this repetitive stuff one more time, and that's not necessarily a good example of learning. And that's a hard thing. Again, it's a hard thing for people to grasp, because that's what I was taught when I was in the credentialing program as a teacher. I mean, we were taught to assess on paper and use your curriculum and all these different things. And I think that learning is a lot more dynamic than that, and especially with all the tools we have now.
Right, and like you were saying earlier, like the whole aspect with like teachers, of course, using GoFormative and all these other like tools that we have right now, like overall, like from a student's perspective at least, I see it's a whole lot more efficient, and also like as opposed to like just taking pictures on my phone and like uploading to Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think like the whole online system, even if I were to be a hybrid student, it's a whole lot like easier overall. Like budget aside, everything's easier and a whole lot more efficient, because it's just automated. Like it automatically grades my test, automatically grades my homework and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So if right now, like, is that like budget that usually goes to like copying and printing and all that stuff? Is that like being applied right now? Like, are we allowed to ask that question?
That's fine. I mean, I know, because I'm very transparent. Basically, we've been able to purchase a lot of things for teachers. I mean, we've had teachers who feel very passionate about a particular program. Like, we have teachers in world language that love Quizlet, and so that comes at a cost. Other teachers are looking for other pieces of software that the district isn't providing, and so as a result, Quizlet ran I think was a couple $1,000s for a site license, and they only do site licenses. So I think that giving teachers the tools, and then this is kind of an anomaly year, because we're not spending money on copying. We say, oh wow, we can try all these different things, but you got to scale it. If it's one teacher, we'll buy one license. If it's 50 teachers, we'll buy a site license. But basically, it comes down to is that we want to be able to budget money accordingly. So when we do come to a more normal situation, we look at the things that were working and the things that we really got a lot out of, and we'll go ahead and continue those subscriptions to those particular programs. And so that's, again, they're just tools. And I think it's very important that, and this is actually a trap when we go back to the worksheet conversation, is that sometimes the curriculum is a tool, not a strategy. It's basically, this is a tool to get me to these goals I want my students to be able to do. And if that tool there's not a strategy to connect the two, then it's just, you're just kind of doing something. You're not really doing anything to get, not necessarily, maybe get to the objective by accident. But I think that likewise with technology, if we're going to use things that, assessments or some collaborative writing tools or providing online reading or things like that, those are all things that are tools. But what are the strategies that connect it to what we're trying to accomplish? And those are things that are really hard for teachers who are, again, they're trying to, this year they're developing curriculum. Next year, maybe they have to be able to go further on those conversations as to what are your goals now? Now we've gone through this year, looking back, what worked, what didn't, what's getting our students where they need to get, and so on. And there's a lot of questions we're going to be answering as we progress through the rest of this year.
Right. So this year is kind of working more or less as an experiment for years to come with.
Again,
tech.
It's a forced shift. It's a forced shift. So basically is that we have to head a transition. And one of the things that I remember distinctly being at a workshop where the presenter said, as soon as a lesson goes into a file it goes into a manila folder and into the file cabinet, then it's become institutionalized. So basically, what you're doing as a teacher, you're pulling it out. You're teaching. You may make some changes to it, but essentially, you're using that unit or that lesson every year for the next 30 years. And so all of a sudden we had to make this shift where all those things that were institutionalized in that file cabinet now turned around and they have to be applied online, and everybody had to kind of scramble to learn, okay, well, how do I make this work? What if this doesn't work? This requires you to be in person. How's this going to work on Zoom? Or how's this going to work when students are submitting things electronically? So the thinking had to change, and that was and that's a huge shift, because now I don't think we want to waste that thinking on old ideas if we move into once we move back into kind of a more normal situation. We need to take those ideas and continue to innovate and develop next practices, not just go back to the old ones.
So schools really are like moving forward and trying to find new ways to make education work, right? But like there are some smaller things that I don't think people really consider often. I was wondering what the school was planning on doing if too many people wanted to go back to school and choose hybrid.
Well, again, then we have to. We're limited. So basically, if we had a huge influx of people, we'd have to recalibrate. But right now, looking at the district-wide data, and our data reflects the district. We're looking at right around just over 70% of our students want to remain remote, and so we're not talking about a huge population of our student body right now returning to school. And with the purple tier, that shift, even though we can proceed as planned, I anticipate we're going to have people asking for changes too. We have the wait list, and we're going to try to honor most of these requests best we can. So, big picture, you can kind of, in a way, I was thinking about predicting it, because I thought that the people that I was talking to, the parents and the students, people were still just not, they had a lot of doubt, and they expected that once you get to winter and you have flu season start, you have flu and COVID season and everything else, that every sniffle becomes a concern. And so I think that people made that decision, and our data reflects that.
Right. And what kind of like struggles or difficulties have you and like the rest of the school board faced like in trying to adapt to fitting both of these programs at once?
Well, I think we're going to take two different views. We're like I represent the boots on the ground, so I think that more than everything else is keeping people's spirits up. The fact that we're doing innovative stuff. I mean, everyone's tired. Students are tired. Teachers are tired, and we're all doing something different. And so, really, keeping people, really valuing people. I mean, I'm finding myself. I mean, it is one thing that it's great to have Zoom conversations. I love it. It's also nice to pick up the phone, and it's nice to have an in-person conversation with people occasionally. But basically, I think that really having that face-to-face contact is really important, because there's so many emails flying around and people get so put out, and it's really emails cause this reaction sometimes that make it a little more impersonal. So I think, how do you make this more personal? And so that's really my aim is I know that Ms. Gillis has this blooms. She always puts blooms before Maslow before Bloom as part of her statement she makes all the time. The idea that we got to feel good first before we can learn anything. And so that safety factor and making sure people are feeling acknowledged and valued, that has been my big push. And also understanding that people need to move. So it's a combination of safety and movement. Now the board, they're talking about 30,000 feet, and they have to make some real decisions based upon what county health is saying, advice from our superintendent, and then mind you that you have a shift in superintendencies as well. You have Mr. Schmidt retiring, and you have Dr. Malloy coming in, and so it's almost like it's like here's your halibut, start filleting. It's like this big old problem that Mr. Schmidt handed off to Dr. Malloy, and I think that there's that relationship piece on Dr. Malloy's from his standpoint too. That how does he build in those relationships with the people around him, and how does he really figure out who the where the assets are, how to get the support, how to get people to get all the faith in him as the leader of our district. So there's a lot of factors, and like I said earlier, I mean my brain feels like it's going to explode sometimes. I feel like I got done with an AP test or any type of anything else. Like if you've ever had that feeling where you think every synapse in your brain is fired, I get that a lot recently. And so I'm actually looking forward to taking a few days off through Thanksgiving because it's been a lot, and every day it's something else.
So one of our before I talk about the question that our viewers had, I wanted to bring up something that I was considering while making the decision about whether I wanted to go back. So I was wondering like how well COVID regulations could be enforced, and I saw like the news that the school released about how they were planning on doing that, but I also I saw messages sent by parents of people who were planning to go back that were strongly against, like separating everyone because they really wanted more personal connections. So what would you say to that?
Well, again, I think that everybody needs to find that balance. And so, I mean, my job is to provide both systems. And so I want to make it as engaging as possible for every student. And so when I was asked a similar question at one of the parent meetings, and I went back to safety, and I really took that off of a town hall that Dr. Malloy had stated as well. That first off is what makes your child feel safe. What makes you feel as if you're going to feel that you're going to thrive. Because as I said, you can't learn if you don't feel safe. You can't learn if you're not in a comfortable situation. And so you got to find that balance. And if you feel that connection with your teacher has that value, and your connection with your friends has that value, then by and large, you need to make that step. But the other hand is that if you're concerned about that and you feel that you can you're doing well and you're making connections, then you need to make that choice as well. Because I know a lot of students are meeting each other after school, whether off campus or we have the on campus things going on. There's things out there that people can be doing. So again, I try to be very neutral here because I don't want to make anybody feel as if they're making the wrong choice, or I think it'd be insincere if I were to say, hey, I prefer this over that, because then I might influence somebody. It has to be a choice. You just sit down with your family and have a conversation of what's important to you.
Right, and another thing, and I'm again not sure how far deep we're allowed to go with this, but like, do you happen to know like the grade trends compared to like previous in person?
Yeah, actually, like I go back to a lot of students struggling that we have an uptick in D's and F's. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of students who are really struggling, and then at midterm, I thought that here we get to quarter and we had these high numbers. I thought, oh my gosh, we have all these interventions in place. I bet we're going to see those numbers go down. They actually stayed the same, and actually went up a little bit. So my question is to staff now is what is that support class? The support class for students who are utilizing it is working really well. The problem is not everybody's utilizing it, and oftentimes the students who need it the most aren't accessing. So that's the problem. There's an issue with teachers. Are they giving the normal amount of work as opposed to kind of figuring out that how much screen time we're putting in front of students? That if I'm teaching the whole 80-minute period, then and I'm turning around and giving you another 30 minutes of homework or an hour of homework that you're online again, what am I really doing to students? So there's some questions that we need to answer. And then likewise for students going into the hybrid, if you're going to come to school, you better be doing something worthwhile. It's not there to take a test. You're going to have to use it as a time to do something in depth where you have an opportunity to socialize and do a group project or something that's going to involve face-to-face contact, not necessarily something that's just going to be pencil and paper where you're just kind of producing something that's for the teacher, from that standpoint. There's got to be some a little more in-depth conversation. There's also for the teacher, but I think in a different way. So there's just a lot of nuances that have contributed to some students doing quite well and some students really struggling.
And speaking of tests, one of our viewers was wondering how testing is going to be run in terms of like concerns about cheating and then people like testing on different days.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that teachers need to figure out how they're going to do assessments. My personal thing is if a student can Google it, you shouldn't be asking that question. So essentially, create something that actually measures students' mastery of a concept. But it goes back, if a student's hybrid and you're testing on different days, is that part of that asynchronous work that you're asking them to do, or are you? Because again, I don't want students simply going through tests when they're there in person. So I think that we're working hard on with our teachers to ensure that it's not going to be something. The tests aren't just your run-of-the-mill tests where people are just producing something that gives feedback, but not necessarily meaningful feedback. I think that there's a component with testing that teachers are very concerned about cheating, obviously, but again, then change the way you test, and change the way you assess. There's so many other ways to ensure that students are demonstrating what they know.
Okay. So you've given us
Sorry.
it seemed like the appropriate answer. Yes. So you've told us about how you've been answering these questions all the time, and it's like stressful to keep thinking about it. So I wanted to close with a super chill question.
Okay, all right. Love super chill.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving is coming up, and everything's changing, but pie is not changing. So do you have a favorite pie or food to enjoy at Thanksgiving?
Oh, it's like I'm like one of the people who loves all things Thanksgiving. I mean, I was my sister. I was talking to her this morning, and she doesn't like turkey. She's having chicken, and that's like the most sacrilegious thing. It's like you can't have chicken on Thanksgiving. But anyway, there's some things like, for example, for pies. I mean, my wife makes absolutely kick butt apple pie. Just your run-of-the-mill apple pie, but she uses a combination of different apples, and it's not overly sweet. So that's awesome. I love it. I have a Weber barbecue, and I smoke my turkey. So I've learned that over the years. Every year gets a little bit better. So the turkey is awesome, and it always the stuffing that comes out that has a little smoke to it as well. Again, it's like it's my favorite holiday, and because I'm not young anymore, I have to pace myself, because when I was in my college, in my 20s, and high school and such, I can come home and I can eat a whole bunch, and I'd run it all off. I can't do that anymore. So I have to pace myself out a little more and just enjoy things in smaller quantities. But it's good stuff. It's one of my favorite. It might be my favorite holiday. So yeah. So that's my take on that.
I love the food too. Pumpkin pie is my personal favorite.
Yeah.
So.
Apple? Yeah.
Everyone, oh my gosh, no one realizes how glorious pumpkin pie is.
The pumpkin pie is awesome. And you know what's good too? Pecan pie is good too. But the problem is that I've had it so sweet it actually hurts your teeth sometimes. I can take a sliver of pecan pie. I can eat pumpkin pie too. That's another favorite. But again, I just like that there's that my wife. I don't know what she does, but other than there's a combination of apples. But the apple pie is absolutely killer.
Oh, I think that's all the questions we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Anytime. I mean, I'd love to be on again. Thank you so much for taking time with me as well. I mean, I hope I didn't get too technical, but again, and I really appreciate what you're doing. This is what it's all about. I mean, you have the time to do this, and it's something you're passionate about. And I hope you guys go national real soon. Take care. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays.
Too.
Thank you.